Hello, I want to talk to you today about something that's often overlooked in photographic tutorials, and that's the idea of creativity. Or more specifically, creativity as a process and as a methodology that can be repeated and relied upon, rather than some kind of wonderful abstract artistic idea that inspiration just strikes you from time to time and you get lucky. The best way I can think to describe it is if you imagine your creativity as a muscle. Muscles, if you exercise them and use them regularly, become bigger and stronger, and if you don't use and exercise them, they atrophy and waste away. And I feel it's the same with creativity. If you don't pay any attention to your creativity and your own creative process, your work will suffer, it'll become derivative, boring, repetitive. But if you invest time in your creativity, you will reap massive results from it. Now, the notion of there being a process was something first introduced to me at college nearly 20 years ago when I started my degree. And the way they used to teach in college was by using logbooks, which are these things I want to talk to you about today. There is every single one of my logbooks going back to 1995. At college there were fairly strict rules as to how you used them because they were part of our assessment and how the tutors marked our degree. However, in essence, all they do is record the process that you go through when you make and take your photographs. So therefore, you can use them in any way you choose. The way I use them these days is simplified somewhat from the time back at college, but it's what I find works for me and what I keep coming back to, because if I had to put a ton of effort in, the odds are I probably wouldn't do it. First off, on a simple level, your logbook can be used as a technical record of how you created each image. What gear you used, how you lit the shot, any special equipment you needed, or particular notes on production. You can also, of course, include any specific Photoshop or other workflow notes if you think they're relevant. Here you can go into as much detail as you think you need, because it's you who will have to refer back to these notes at a later date. Now, the reason for all this should be obvious. Your logbook can, of course, act as a recipe book for recreating certain images further down the line if you're asked to. In a more involved way, your logbook should be used to record your creative process. Now, you always start with a brief, whether that brief is client-led, for example, I need to shoot some images for a social media campaign, or it's a personal brief, I want to shoot some sexy fitness shots. You need some sort of structure to work within at the outset, even if it's quite vague. Moving on from the brief, gather images that inspire you. Use other people's work as well as your own, but always credit them. Not only because it's professional courtesy, but because you'll almost certainly want to keep track of their work in future and keep up to date with what they're doing if you like their stuff. Make sure you draw the right things from these images. Some of these images might be indicators of pose, some lighting, some mood. What you're not doing is just flat out copying them, because that's a bit pointless and it's plagiarism. Now, in amongst all this technical stuff, you can weave in your ideas, suitable locations, subjects and models, all the other basic production stuff. Drop in outtakes if they help to illustrate points, or shots of the location for future reference. Then stick in the finished images with as many detailed notes as you think you'll need to help illuminate any points at a later date. Now we come to one of the most important points of the logbook, and that's assessing each shoot after you've finished it. You're trying to learn lessons from each shoot and trying to move forward. This was a very key part of being marked on the degree at college, because obviously tutors wanted to see that we'd learnt lessons from each shoot and move forward and weren't just repeating ourselves. But in the real world, it's even more vital, because obviously for commercial reasons and creative reasons, you've got to keep moving your work forward and evolving and getting better and better, and you won't do that if you don't learn lessons. Now here you can of course be honest and brutal with yourself, because nobody else is really going to be reading it, okay? And if you do lie to yourself, it's rather pointless again. You can put in anything you like in this assessment, of course. You can mention technical points you weren't happy with, camera handling where you really didn't do a very good job, or you can mention, huge improvements you think you've made and really vital steps forward you think you'd taken. Just draw lots of positives and negatives from each shoot so that you're being honest with yourself and are able to take vital steps forward. Now, in a nutshell, that's the process I follow, although with each shoot it'll be slightly different. Sometimes it's enough just to stick one finished image in, along with a setup shot and a note to say, should have taken more bloody plate shots. And sometimes there's an enormous amount to draw out from each shoot. Why go to all this trouble? Well, the benefits are huge. First off, as already mentioned, the logbook can serve as a recipe book, where you look up how you shot something and then recreate that shot for a client at a later date. Secondly, it's a roadmap of your thought process. And you often won't appreciate this until sometime after the shoot when you come back to look through things. You'll spot trends you've subconsciously been following, lessons you seem to refuse to learn, and habits you're always defaulting to. Thirdly, when you find yourself losing your way, turning out work that doesn't feel right, returning to your logbook and looking at the bigger process can often set you on track again. Fourth, recording the process you go through can often lead you towards new ideas, as strands from each shoot will present themselves as you take each shot apart and record all the various aspects. And last but by no means least, clients bloody love it. Several times in recent years I've had my logbook with me on shoots and I've opened it up to show a client what I mean about a certain lighting approach or just to indicate an idea I'm working towards, and they get a ravenous look in their eyes. They start thumbing through it and going, "Oh, what's that location? Oh, we could use that idea in that feature I'm thinking of," and so on and so on. Okay, they absolutely adore looking into your mind and seeing the creative process at work. For example, as an absolute cast iron proof of this, I shot this test around 18 months ago and then was asked to recreate a very, very similar look for a men's fitness shoot about 6 months ago. Okay? Sometimes it's not as blatant as that, but like I say, I can assure you clients really love to see what's going on inside your head. I'd highly recommend you start keeping some sort of workbook, diary or logbook. The extent to which you use it is totally up to you, of course. I've found them more and more essential as my career has developed, and if you told me 19 years ago I'd still be relying on something that I was forced to use at college, I would never have believed you, but there we go.